Hi, I'm Connie Whitman, your host, and you're listening to Enlightenment of Change on webtalkradio.net. As always, thank you so much for joining us this week. So my motivational quote is by Judith Martin, and Judith says, "The whole country wants civility. Why don't we have it? It doesn't cost anything. No federal funding, no legislation is involved. One answer is the unwillingness to restrain oneself. Everybody wants other people to be polite to them, but they don't want the freedom of not having to be polite to others." Wow, such a great quote. You know, we're faced daily with headlines or often our own encounters of incivility at work, whether it's the attention-grabbing Me Too stories, fearful business practices, hostility, discriminatory actions, or even multi-generational conflicts. And that's just to name a few that we face in the workplace. So incivility has grown to epic proportions. Incivility impacts productivity, teamwork, and overall job satisfaction for each of us. So why is this happening, and what can we do about it? So of course you're in store for a great answer to that question. My guest today is the founder and president of Protocol Advisors, Inc., a specialist in providing business etiquette training to professionals at respected organizations from companies like Tiffany Co to Boeing. She also helps prepare students to at top colleges and universities to achieve the highest degree of workplace success. She's an expert on business etiquette, sought out by leading organizations. My guest takes on these challenges in her great book, everyone should read, Excuse Me, The Survival Guide to Modern Business. She presents a new playbook for workplace behavior that respects the individual, which in turn benefits the company. Please help me welcome back my wonderful guest, Rosanne Thomas. And I think this is the third time she's on the show. I can have her on weekly. She's just amazing. So, Rosanne, thank you so much for being on.
It's truly a delight, Connie. You are a delight, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me again. Truly, Thank you for wanting to talk about this extremely important, timely topic. It's on everyone's mind. Everyone knows it's a problem. No one knows what to do about it.
That's exactly right. Now, you've taken your insights from your book, Excuse Me, and all of your years and years and years of experience. Not that I'm saying you're old. I say, Rosanne, my new thing is when people say, "Oh, she's seasoned" in introductions when I speak, I say, "That's right, I'm hot and spicy." So you and I are hot and spicy. But you've taken all of this wonderful experience you've had, and you started a new adventure with the National Institute for Civil Discourse. So I really want to kind of focus on what you're doing with that. It's a different spin, but it's a whole new level of awareness that I think we need to talk about today. So first, tell us what's the origin of the National Institute for Civil Discourse. I think that's a good place to start.
Okay, terrific. So, it's funny, I've only really learned about it within the last couple of years myself. It's under the auspices of the University of Arizona, and it was founded after the tragic shooting of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords and all of the other people who were shot back in the beginning of this decade. And everyone was just, is lovely, I should say, and she was a proponent of civility, and it's just ironic and tragic that this happened to her. But the very good news is that it has started a discussion and a thrust toward more civility. And the fact of the matter is the last years, not to get political at all, but, I have to say that it seems to be something that is more and more on people's minds because everyone's being affected by it in a negative way.
Yeah, it's really true. So NICD, right? That's the acronym for it. What is the mission? What are we trying to accomplish with this?
Sure. So it started, their hope was to just kind of keep it, to get politicians more polite with one another because nothing was getting done. We've got these elected officials who are getting nothing done. All we have is the vitriol and the name calling and the insults, and it's awful. And what happens is not only is that bad enough, but the reason that they are elected officials was to try to do something for their constituents, and it's not happening. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, it's tragic. Every time you listen to the news, there's some type of who's fighting with who's bad mouthing who. It's ridiculous because it's such unproductive energy, but it's just unproductive because we're not getting anything done. Why do you think? Because you've been doing this for such a long time, working with companies specifically on this topic. I think you're a pioneer when it comes to that, working with organizations. Why has civility just been on the decline? Like, what is going on?
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's all of a sudden there seem to be no consequences. There once was a time, and it doesn't seem all that long ago, where there were severe consequences, and I still think there are, but people don't perceive them as much as they used to, in terms of your professional life, your social life, your personal life. If you were uncivil, you were reprimanded, or you were denied opportunities, for all of those, in all of those areas. And now, so that's one reason we don't perceive that the fact that there is a consequence, and they're huge. I mean, they're bottom line consequences, there are personal, interpersonal consequences. That's one factor. The other factor is that we're seeing people in very prominent positions model this kind of behavior and sort of get away with it, if you will. We don't see them penalized the way we used to see it. That's my opinion.
And it's crazy because we have all these laws, right? Hostile work environment, all these HR policies in place to avoid this kind of behavior. So this is not a new topic by any stretch of the imagination, yet it's just exponentially so bad. And even to the point, my husband going to work, to get to the parkway, there's this ramp we have to get on. And somebody must have cut someone off on the highway before the ramp to the parkway. And the guy pulled over on the ramp. Now it's rush hour traffic in the morning, gets out of his car, walks over to the guy who I guess was behind him, and flailing his arms. My husband said, Connie, it was bizarre to watch that. Like, what could have been so terrible that this man is this angry at this other driver that you're backing everybody up? It's just crazy what we think we can get away with in the most weird, odd places, not even just at work. So now let's talk about, you mentioned this already, and I want to dig in a little bit. There's tremendous costs involved with incivility, and you mentioned interpersonal and financial. Let's talk about both of them, because I think people think, oh, it's just the way they are, which is nonsense, right? It's costing us productivity, again, both in the workplace, but also in our government. So what are some of the consequences, the costs involved?
Well, I know more probably about the corporate arena, the private arena than I do the public arena. But I mean, I can see, and what I hear and what I read, I can see it seems like nothing is getting done in the public arena in politics. But in the private arena, it's tremendously costly. It affects the bottom line because there are turnover costs, there are legal costs, there are health costs, there are costs to your reputation. Nothing stays, in Vegas, if you will, anymore. I mean, whatever happens within your organization, you can pretty much find it on Glassdoor or on social media the very next day. And what it does is it certainly hinders productivity, and because it limits creativity, because people don't want to talk with one another. And so we're not producing anything because we can't even be in the same room with one another without fighting, if you will. So all of these things, there was some statistic that said, it was in the billions of dollars what incivility costs corporations on a yearly basis. And turnover costs alone, it costs something like maybe $60,000 just to replace one non-exempt employee. It's ridiculous. And unfortunately, Connie, I have to say this, I'm going to say it. It's allowed. It's usually starts at the top, and it's condoned at the top.
And you see it, everybody listening. I know, Rosanne, it happens in meetings where you're in meetings and you're trying to be innovative, come up with new protocols, whatever it is that the organization is trying to create or do, right? Whatever their endeavor is. And you have the big mouths, right, who talk and talk and talk and talk, and they dominate. And then you have people who are probably very creative, but so afraid to speak because there's so many bullies in the room, that they're literally like almost told shut up in not, maybe not verbally, but with body language and with tones and with talking over people. So incivility, I mean, we've all experienced it, Roseanne. As we're talking about this, people are probably commuting with us saying, oh my goodness, this goes on in my organization all the time. And the other problem, I think, is that's how silos are created, I would think, right?
Probably, yes. People sort of get, distant from one another, and they only communicate with their small group. And that's not good. That doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the company achieve its objectives for sure. And it doesn't do anything for anyone. I mean, I would think that shareholders would be very concerned about the amount of incivility on the job. I really would, because it is so expensive. And, getting back to what you were just saying about meetings, Connie, meetings in and of themselves are difficult because they're time, they take up a lot of time, obviously. But if they're not run well, it's a complete waste of time, everyone's time. So there have to be some guidelines around meeting protocol, and that has to be understood going into the meeting. Who says what, how you listen, how you don't argue, you don't interrupt, you don't call people names, you don't employ the nonverbal tactics that you just said, the eye rolling and the sighing and all that kind of stuff, which is absolutely meant to keep people from expressing their opinions. So this has to be stated by the managers, by the higher ups, that that's not going to be tolerated.
It's interesting. My younger son, he's going to be a junior in college, and so he got an internship. And it was really cool. The woman, shout out to Jeannie, the woman he reports to, and Jeannie Chichella is her name, and she's bringing him to meetings. So when he came home and he said that one day, I was like, why? You're a kid. And he says, Mom, it's really interesting. She said she wants me to observe what goes on in meetings so that at a young age, he can learn what's a waste of time and how to create a productive meeting. So they debrief after, and she says to him, who do you think spoke succinctly and got their point across? And then who do you think kind of got lost in their own thoughts? And not to put anyone down, she's not talking behind anyone's back. She's really trying to get him to see when you speak succinctly in a meeting, because it saves time and it increases productivity. Additionally, she's saying when you're running the meeting, because she runs some of these meetings, she said, notice how I did this, because people do go on tangents. We're human. It's all good. But then you have to be in control to say, wait, we're getting off topic here. Hey, let's come back to what the purpose of this meeting is. So I found that so fascinating and forward thinking on her part, to teach him at a young age to start to discern what is a waste of time and what is really a timely conversation as it relates to whatever the topic of the meeting is. Brilliant, right?
He is so lucky to have that mentorship. He truly is. And you pointed out some other, people do get on a tangent. They want to be heard. They want a captive audience, and that's a waste of everyone's time, obviously.
Sure.
But some people are thinking they're too polite to interrupt. But in fact, the meeting organizer, it's that person's responsibility to say, that's an interesting point, John. Let's get back to the agenda, and we can take a look at that offline. So there's got to be some structure, or you know what? No one will go to another meeting because they know it's a waste.
Yeah, and it's funny. We're still talking about incivility, but it's funny. I remember my husband came home one day and on a Friday, and he just looked so tired. I said, what's the matter? And he goes, I was in meetings for 37 hours this week. So I looked at him, right, and I said, when does the work get done? And he said, that's the problem. He said, if we're in meetings, how again, this affects that whole productivity level. So let's go back, okay, to incivility. How can we personally, individually, because it's easy to say it's her fault, it's his fault. Well, she didn't run the meeting well. How do we personally take control to revive civility in our own workplaces? Let's start with that, or in homes, or with our friends.
Or anywhere.
Anyway.
Okay, so first of all, we understand what civility is. It's respect for the other person. I'd like to take it a little further and talk about the fact that it's also empathy for the other person.
Sure.
If we have a better understanding of where that person's coming from by truly trying to empathize with them, we're gonna listen better. We're going to be more civil, probably, and probably show good etiquette for that better as well. But try to figure out where they're coming from, and from there, you model the good behavior. Listening is critical. So if someone's saying something to you, you're acknowledging what they're saying. You are empathizing with what they're saying. You're not necessarily agreeing with what they're saying. For sure, you don't have to do with that. You don't, but you have to say that's an interesting point. And then after that, you can say what you want to say. But we try to keep the emotions out of it, and we always try to keep the respect and empathy in it.
Yeah, and we're emotional beings, so that's everybody's listening. Roseanne saying, "Well, yeah, but when someone says something stupid, I get it." And here's another thing, and I know you teach this as well because you and I have spoken about this in previous conversations or shows that we've done. When we communicate, it's my perspective, my filter from my background, my personal style of approaching DISC, Myers-Briggs, whatever, model you use at your organizations, how I was raised, where I was raised, for inner city versus a farm. You're going to respond to different stimuli in a different way. Not saying your perspective is wrong and mine is right. It's just a different perspective. So sometimes in meetings, if we could say, oh, I understand, don't necessarily agree. I understand your perspective or where you're coming from. I see it 180-degree difference, and I see it from over here. Again, I just did that in a very respectful tone and in a respectful manner, correct?
Absolutely right. You certainly did. And you can even restate what they've said. So what I'm hearing you say is, and once you've restated, they have no question in their minds as to whether or not you have understood them. And that's really key, I think, because once they know you've understood them and then you still disagree with them, well, that's fair. That's fair because you have all the facts and they know that you've got all the facts. You also pointed out something about where you come from and how you look at the world. We call those unconscious biases. And
yes.
we've all got them.
Welcome.
We tend to think we don't, but we absolutely do. So we need to challenge unconscious biases that we have. About how we look at age, gender, ethnicities, everything, education, even backgrounds. We've got to challenge how we look at those things because it's going to affect the way in which we hear the other person.
Which is interesting because it's an unconscious bias. We don't even know they're there. So again, if we could be in these meetings or with people where they say, hey, I understand your perspective, that's an opportunity for you to think, that is my perspective. Where did that come from? Now let me stop talking, stop thinking for a minute, open my ears, 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? We should be listening twice as much as we speak and really tune in to let me hear their perspective because clearly my perspective is coming from some place from my background. Let me hear this new perspective. And I think, Roseanne, what happens is we go from this tunnel vision to a little bit broader, a little broader, a little broader. And if we could get to the point where we really start seeing that 360 perspective, I almost think that civility will just come because we can agree to disagree, right?
Absolutely right. And that's a really good, I think that's a good strategy, Connie, to tell you the truth. Once we truly listen and display empathy, all of a sudden we realize that it's not a black and white situation. It almost never is. And we start to look at the person a little bit differently, not as the villain and the enemy, but as someone who has a thoughtful perspective that's different from ours. Where could we find the common ground? That's what we're after if we want to accomplish anything.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, Roseanne, the common grounds. I think that we talk about diversity and we talk about, what's the other big word in the corporations? Diversity and...
Inclusivity.
Inclusivity. And listen, I get it. I think a diverse population, no matter where you live or where you work, again, it's a different perspective. I think you're going to shed a brighter light on whatever you're trying to accomplish. So I think diversity is great. I think we need to me, they're negative words, inclusivity and diversity, because it's like, well, that you want to hire somebody different than you. When I think if we can start looking at, well, what do we have in common as humans? Forget about all the other crap, because it's crap. So human to human, go ahead, you want to say something.
What we have in common, but the fact that this person brings a lot of things to the party that we don't have that's going to
Absolutely.
help everybody. I mean, that's the thing. Study after study has proven that the more diverse a group, the better the result, whatever it is that you're after. So it helps us all and so we go to various people's strengths. We've all got strengths, but we don't all have every strength in the world. And so that's where diversity helps us.
Yeah, and I think because we're human, we have egos. And that is where the problem lies, right, Rosanne? Because our egos get in the way of doing productive conflict or doing productive conversations, of listening. How many people have you met in your life, in your career, Rosanne, where they don't listen and you think, did they even let me get a word in edgewise? It was all about them. That's dangerous.
It is dangerous. And, we kind of tune out when someone else is speaking. What we're thinking about is what we're going to say next.
Yeah, we take turns.
Yeah, exactly right. So we're not even we're respectful. Maybe we're respectful in letting them finish their sentence. And some people think that's all I have to do. No, that's not all we have to do. We have to really tune into not only what the person's saying, but the feelings behind what the person is saying, which is where most of the full information is, I think.
That's absolutely true, because we're passionate about our opinions. What we're talking about listening skills. What does respectful listening look like? What have you seen?
So, if someone comes to us and has something they want to talk about, we give them our undivided attention, which means we put down our electronic devices, maybe even turn off our electronic devices. We establish eye contact. We invite them to speak. We offer door openers, things like saying, that's interesting, or that happened to me, or please tell me more. Anything to encourage the speaker to go on. When we're listening well, after every few sentences or so, we restate. So, Connie, what I'm hearing you say is, and Connie will say, yes, and go on. Or Connie will say, well, no, that's not exactly what I meant. And she'll get to restate it from her point of view. I don't want to ask questions because I derail Connie's thought process. I want to hear everything from Connie's thought process. I want to restate what I'm hearing from Connie. And then at the end, when I say, so in a nutshell, Connie, this is what your problem is, and you'll say, yes, what do I do? Only at that point can I start to maybe help, offer advice or say, I don't know what to tell you, Connie.
Yeah, it's funny when I teach coaching, listening is such a critical component to coaching, because if I don't understand what's going on in your head, how can I possibly help you get better at, and I'm usually teaching coaching, sales, service, right in that realm. How can I teach you how to communicate better with your customer, or how to engage that customer better, if I don't understand where your fears lie, or what's holding you back, or how did you say that? Let's do a role play. Share with me what you exactly said, and then we could tweak from there. But if I say, you know what your problem is, Rosanne? You did this, and you do this, and you do this, and the employee does this.
Right, exactly.
But meanwhile, I'm not digging in. Why are you saying it that way? Why are you afraid with this type of client or behavioral style? So we take turns talking at each other, or I'm talking at you in coaching, versus really understanding the perspective. It's listening. We don't listen, Rosanne. It's a little scary.
It is scary. And you just said something really important. People are afraid to get a no, maybe. They don't want to have someone disagree with them. But the fact of the matter is, people are still disagreeing with you whether or not they say so. So you might as well get it out in the open, because that's the only way you're going to be able to maybe encourage them to think differently, or maybe give you the business that you're looking for. I mean, they have objections, and if you don't get them out, you're never going to get what you want to get.
And it's funny because people laugh when we're in class. Like, I'll say something. It's just simple. Like, this is a simple one. I was beginning the class, and this young man was sitting there, and I don't know why, what he did. I guess I observe. I'm so good at observing body language now, just because I've been doing this so long, doing sales so long. And I went over, I took a pen from the podium in the training room, and I walked over and I handed it to him, and he looked at me. And I said, oh, did you not need a pen? He goes, I did. How did you know that? And I looked at him because he didn't ask me. And I said, oh, I don't know. I something in your body language was like you needed a pen. He goes, you scare me. So it was really cute.
Such a great point, Connie. because nonverbal communication says volumes. When we're in face-to-face interactions, it accounts for 60% of the message we convey. And even when we're listening, if we sort of mirror emotions, like if that person's happy, we smile. If they look sad, we kind of look concerned. That allows them to realize that we are not only tuning into what they're saying, but how they're feeling about what they're saying. It builds trust. It builds trust between two people.
Yeah, and 55% of our communication is body language. So I often, when I teach body language, I say, okay, so your body's speaking volumes. Do you know what it's saying out there? Because people are, whether you intend it or not, people are reading that whole vibe, that whole vibration. We speak. I am very, you could see I'm very animated. But that always helps me get my point across because I care. And I think that comes across in my body language and my tone of voice and all those things, my eye contact, all of that. That's all body language, you know?
Absolutely. That's what actors do. That's what newscasters do. And it's to get their point across. So it's not only the words by any means. It is absolutely how you come across while you say those words. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
sure.
and being engaged. I think you said that before. Just being engaged in the whole whatever is going on in the meeting with the person, whatever the situation. Now, is there a way to promote civility within our community? And when I say community, you know, we're talking workplace, home, family, and friends. Is there a way that we could promote this?
Well, again, going back to the point that we have to be civil first, and I liked what you said about Judith Martin's statement. Everyone thinks everyone else is uncivil, but we don't think we are. You know? And so we've got to start to think about that a little bit. And maybe we're not, and hope, you know, but how are we coming across? So think first about that. Secondly, you start to just live that way. And if someone, you know, being civil doesn't mean that we have to put up with incivility. A lot of people don't know that, I think. Well, they wonder about that. Say, well, that means I can't, you know, speak my mind or share my opinion. Not true at all. You just need to share it in a respectful way. So even if the other person's getting agitated and angry, you can say, I can see that you're angry, and I understand, you know, that you're frustrated. This is how I feel about this. So we never get involved. You know, we never sort of pour gasoline on the fire, if you will. But we say, you know, I think my feeling about this is that, and in the future, if you could let me finish my sentence, I'd really appreciate it. So that kind of thing goes a long way, because a lot of people don't even know that they're being rude, if you will, or lacking in civility. They don't know it. So we have to educate them a little bit.
Yeah, it's almost that unconscious bias that if we were raised in an incivil or lack of civility in our home, it's learned behavior. We don't even realize it because it's part of us, of who we are.
Right. That's exactly right. And, you know, I don't want to pick upon, I mean, I'm not picking upon the generations. I'm really not. But, you know, it's hard because their frame of reference is so different. So what older folks, the baby boomers and older, think is civil behavior, you know, the younger folks think nothing of, or incivil, I should say. You know, for instance, talking with someone while you're on your electronic device, that's not a big deal for millennials and younger. They don't think that's rude. Unfortunately, the older folks do. So we have to look at the generations and figure out, you know, whether or not they are looking at the world the same way. I guess that goes back to your unconscious bias that you mentioned.
Yeah, because it's a part of appendage for the younger generation. They were born, or they came out of the womb almost with the iPhones in their hand. So to them, it's part of how we communicate. It's learned behavior. Whether the parent taught them or not, our society has taught them that everything can be done through this mini computer in my hands.
Exactly right. And, you know, it's not just the millennials who have to be concerned about it. The traditionalists, the older folks, have to realize that the times are changing. And so not to take offense necessarily at someone who is looking at his iPhone while he's speaking with you. He doesn't mean it, I'm sure, even though you might take it that way. So we've got to evolve. It's a constant evolution for all of us.
It is. And multi-generations, this isn't a new thing, right? I remember being a kid and my father saying, what's that music you're listening to? And now I'm saying to my kids, what's that music you're listening to? The generational gap has been around forever and ever. It's interesting when you were just saying about the cell phone, it popped into my head when young people come into my classes, corporations, I do training for them for new hires and what have you, for sales, service, and coaching. And first class, they know if they're on their phone, I quietly walk over and I'll kind of do it as a general. Hey guys, put your phones away. If you're looking at your phones, you're not listening, you're not learning. And that's not right? Because we have to learn, we have to do what the organizational culture is. I have to teach that. So why don't we put our phones away? I promise. I give you breaks during lunch. If you have a child that's sick or someone at school and they call, absolutely pick up your phone. I'll know exactly something's up. Go out in the hall and take your phone call. I'm not saying cut yourself off from the world, but you don't need to be checking your social media. And I'll tell you, I do that in the first class when they meet me, and they'll never, ever pull out their cell phones unless, and it's cute because they'll come in and say, listen, my kid's homesick, or they didn't feel 100%. So if the school calls, I say, absolutely, keep your phone on the desk and then just signal me and run out and handle it. Oh my good, life is life, right? But I think when we set those protocols up or expectations, people rise to the occasion of what the expectation is.
Oh, I think for sure. And it's kind of in a way like you're giving them permission to not be connected. And sometimes it's nice to be disconnected, even for a little while. You can say, well, I was disconnected or, off the grid or offline because my instructor said I had to be. So, but it really is kind of nice, a sort of a peaceful time for people, I think.
I do.
But one other thing I usually say to my students, because I say the same thing you do, let's turn off our devices because you're here for a reason and your employer wants you to be here for a reason. So let's turn off the devices and get the most value we can. And I say to them, you know what, I assure you, emergency messages always got through long before cell phones and computers. So,
it's true.
But I'm with you as well, though, if you have a child or an expectant wife or your boss is calling in from China at a certain time. I totally get that. But we want to use that sparingly. We don't want to be the one who's always needs to be online.
Absolutely. And it's hard because we're so used to being online. My last question, is there a way that we could show support for upholding this mission of the NICD where we start to bring that civility to every aspect of our life?
Yes. So I would encourage people to go to their website and learn all about them. And, there are ways in which you can certainly contribute if you want to, because it is a nonprofit organization, but they have a ton of advice on ways in which you can introduce this into your community, whether it happens to be your school, your church, or your job kind of thing. So I would go there rather, I think that's where you've got to go because they've got tools. They've also got scripts for you. They tell you exactly what to say. It's really wonderful. And maybe be the person in your organization who introduces it. Why not? Why not? Because I actually think, Connie, I truly think that there's a rebirth of civility happening out there, and we want to be on the front end of that.
I agree. And here's another resource, another tool that can help people. It don't recreate the wheel. It's created. Use it. Use it as a platform to help promote it. Again, I love how you said in your own personal life, whether at work, at church, doesn't matter. We need to be civil with each other. It's to see, you go to the beach. We were on vacation last week, and to see parents talking to children with incivility, it's like, you almost hold your breath thinking, holy moly, how can you talk in that tone to this little person or to your husband or whoever it is? And we don't even realize that the whole world can hear you. It's crazy.
Exactly right. Yes, we've all got to start from a higher plane, that used to exist and it needs to come. It's still there in us. I think it's still, as Judith Martin said, it costs nothing.
It costs nothing.
But, if you don't, you don't exhibit it, it costs you everything.
It does. It's really true. Guys, if you want more info about Rosanne, please, she's wonderful. She's one of my favorite people that I have on the show, repeated, because the depth of her knowledge and poise and grace, I think we need to rub up against you so that, we could attract a little bit of that. But go to Rosanne's website. It's protocoladvisors.com. And can I give your email, Rosanne?
Sure.
Okay.
Do you have it? I can give it to you if you like.
I have R. Thomas at protocoladvisors.com, correct?
Exactly. And visit the National Institute for Civil Discourse. I think it'll make you feel better that there are some really important people out there behind this movement.
I love it. Ro, if you send me that link, I can post it on the Web Talk Radio platform under the Enlightenment of Change, and everybody could find you and find the organization easy peasy. Okay, that would be awesome.
Wonderful, Connie. Thank you.
Thank you for being on. I know you have to catch a flight. You're just a delight. Guys, if you need me, please reach out to me at Connie@WhitmanAssociates.com. I'd love to hear from you. And we're still giving away our free communication style assessment. For me, it's all about communication. Go to wisdomdecoded.com. Right on that landing page, you get your free communication style assessment. We've updated reports. We're updating the companion book. So all good things coming. And again, another resource to help you become your best self when you engage with others. And we engage with others all the time, right, Rosanne?
All the time.
All the time, Thank you again, Rosanne. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you will join me weekly as we question, build, and discover together that no matter what we're trying to change in our lives, that it's easier than we think. And I hope resources like Rosanne and the organization we discussed today, I hope all of that provides tools for you to be able to address change in an easier manner. Thank you again. Thank you, Rosanne. Thank you all for listening. You've been listening to Enlightenment of Change with me, your host, Connie Whitman, on webtalkradio.net. I wish you all an inspired week. Try to communicate in a civil way. I bet it's easier than you do think. Have a great week, everyone.